will never live up to my expectation. And then he made my life miserable for the next few months until finally HR called me in and they let me go.
Back to the Manager's Mic podcast. Very excited to have our guest today, Ken Sher, who is an executive coach, sales leader. And we were talking just before we got started, Ken, and your background is very impressive. We connected on some similar experiences. And I think although there might be a gap in time, what we're going to do is build some bridges. Because you have the experience, number one. Two, you get the results. And three, you're just easy to talk to. And I hope we'll find how easy it is for me to talk to you, that they can get a lot of value from your years of experience.
I appreciate the comments about me being easy to talk to. I like to think that, but it's nice to hear it. So thank you. I spent 25 years at Johnson & Johnson. Started off as a sales rep carrying the bag in New York City. And then I was a district manager. And then I went in-house to corporate. I was a product manager, product director. And then ultimately, after that, I went into sales training and leadership development. Actually, there was a part in the middle where I led J&J's sales recruiting team for the U.S. So I have experience all three in sales and marketing, as well as in recruiting, which leads me to where I am today as a career coach, helping people find their next role, or an executive coach, helping people be more successful as leaders.
We also wrote a book, though. So talk a little bit about we'll probably go a little deeper into it.
The book is called What's Trust Got to Do with It? Definitely shamelessly stole from Tina Turner, although I won't sing to you. I promise you that if you're safe. And the subtitle is Transforming Leadership, Culture, and the Job Search. And trust, like all great models, is an acronym. And it stands for transparency, results, understanding, simplicity, and teams. And I broke my book down into 3 sections. One is leadership, and I talk how the trust model can help people develop their leadership skills. One is culture, how do you develop organizational culture? And the last one is about job search, how to find your next opportunity.
Let's reverse engineer, because writing a book takes a long time and it takes a lot of thought, power, and process to really simplify. Like, we could just look at a framework like trust and glance over it. What I want to do is kind of reverse engineer back to when you had first started with Johnson & Johnson. What are some key moments as a new person at a company who may be wanting to be a sales manager or finds a calling to do that? What are some key ways that you may be thinking about that framework that you would say to that new sales manager or new salesperson who may be working at a company like Johnson & Johnson or similar? What would you say to that person thinking about the framework trust that you've built?
Let me give you a kind of a higher level view of my time at Johnson & Johnson, because I really learned a lot there. I left under unfortunate circumstances. I'm sure we could get into that as well, but I still have I look at J&J very fondly. I think it's a solid company. There are no perfect companies, but they typically do the right thing. And it's interesting because when I first started, I went to a big sales meeting, and I remember calling my wife and telling her that we do this and we do that. She said, they're brainwashing you, don't you? And I said, yeah, I do, but it's great. It's all positive. It feels good. They didn't just teach us how to sell products or teach us they really showed us how we were helping change the world, whether it's the products we sell. And at the time I was in women's healthcare, giving women the reproductive freedom so they could go to work. I never felt like I was selling a product. I was selling an idea that was really impacting the world. And I also love the way J&J, they did a lot of things ahead of the curve. I remember them giving money for joining a health club, or I remember my bosses saying, you're coaching your kids' soccer team, get out of here, go coach. They did all these things, and it was good for me, but it's also good business. I think it's good business to develop relationships. I learned at J&J that I really do believe that trust is the foundation of great relationships, and great relationships are the key to success. And that's whether you're looking for a job, how quickly can you develop a relationship with a recruiter or hiring manager, or if you're leading a team, developing those trusting relationships has so much value and will really help you get very far in your career while helping other people advance their career.
You said your wife said they're brainwashing you. They're brainwashing you. And I personally feel everything's brainwashing. Just depends on what you wash your brain with. Some people like Taylor Swift or K-pop demon hunters. Those are things that are trending. Talk to
Mhm.
me about what was that brainwashing like, the good brainwashing part, because you said they sold you an idea. Are we able to peel that onion a little more, Ken, if I may?
The thing at J&J, and I know it's cliche and it's not unique to J&J, was that work hard, play hard philosophy.
Right.
We did work hard, but then they would reward us for working hard. They take care of us that way. But I will tell you that the key to me was during my onboarding, um, they told us a lot about Johnson and Johnson and the history of J&J. There was one story that really stuck with me over the years, and it was about General Robert Wood Johnson, who was the founder of J&J. And he
Mm,
wrote a one-page, four-paragraph document called the Credo. It's our Credo or the J&J Credo. And each of the paragraphs talks to the responsibility that the company has to their key stakeholders. So the first responsibility is to healthcare workers and the patients they serve, giving them safe and effective products. The second one is the second paragraph is about the responsibility to employees, giving them a safe place to work at a fair wage. Third paragraph is the responsibility to communities, giving back to the community and being good stewards of the environment. And then the
mm,
last paragraph is about the responsibility to stockholders, giving them a good return on their investment. And what really struck me is that when it was written, General Johnson was the only stockholder. And he put all
mm.
those other stakeholders ahead of him because he knew if he took care of them, if he built the right relationships with them, the company he would get a return on his investment. And over the last 90 plus years, J&J has paid quarterly dividends to all their stockholders. So he
Mm.
really was onto something. It's not about you as the leader, it's about how you take care of your stakeholders and develop those relationships. That's what's going to determine your success.
It's pretty visionary to say before all that was really put into formation that that was written beforehand, if I understand you correctly. I think personally, I never heard that story, and I think it's a really powerful one.
Mhm.
Personally, that's something for me to reflect on when I go back and record. I'm going to be looking forward to hearing that again. Taking some of that visionary skills, because I think having a vision, being able to communicate that vision and level set people is a skill.
Mhm.
What are some ways that you try to level set teammates? Because you were there for 25 years, you were in the game pretty heavily. What are some key things you look for and saying that that person's going to win because of these habits and skills they have versus somebody who may not be able to do that as well? Maybe they're just not there yet because they haven't brainwashed themselves enough, A, or B, they're just there's something else going on. Now, I don't know if that question equips you to answer it best. I could say it a different way. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
I'm just really intrigued based on how you look at that type of layout because
Yeah.
I'm just a nerd for that stuff.
Right. No, I think it's a great question. I forget the guy. I think Callahan was his last name. He was a former chairperson of PepsiCo, and he led them
Okay.
through great growth at the time. But he said that something to the effect of that he sees the failure in companies can always be traced back to their how they develop their leadership. And if you don't take the time to
Mm,
invest in developing your leadership, your success is probably going to be short term at best. Going back to J&J, that's what they did. And this is how I determined whether people who were reporting to me were ready for more responsibility. And this is how it was done with me. And that is putting people in those situations. So if you identify a high potential, high performance individual and you think they could do more in the company, they may or may not be able to. I mean, we all know that just because someone performs well, let's say in the sales role, doesn't mean they're going to be a great sales leader. I'm sure you've seen that. It's one of the reasons why Michael Jordan isn't coaching a basketball team because as great as he was, he's not a coach. So putting them in those situations where you maybe have them lead certain meetings or present at certain meetings, maybe you have them coach a fellow employee, a colleague, giving them opportunities to do things outside their current role and responsibilities will help give you that idea. And you could coach them along the way. So you're coaching them up so that if and when they do get to that next role, they've been there, they've done that, and you've helped them do it even better. And certainly it'll take further development, but that's one way to know. The other
mm,
thing I would say in my trust success model, the U stands for understanding. The number one thing any leader should do is sit down, have a one-on-one conversation, learn from that person. Where are they coming from and where do they want to go? Do they want to
Hmm.
stay in their job and be the best they can be? Well, then that's going to require you to coach and give feedback in one way. Do they want to move up in the organization and continue to grow their career? That's going to require you to coach and give them feedback in another direction. The
Hmm.
first thing I would say for any leader is if you don't know what people are looking to do with their career, what their ambition is, it's really hard to coach and lead them to where you need them to be.
Hmm. I'm going to challenge you a little, if I may, with
Please.
some case examples. What I've seen sometimes in the marketplace, and I'm not a career coach. I want to be very clear, Ken.
Hmm.
I have a very good friend, very smart woman. What she's managed to do is jump from career to career to career to advance herself. What is your perspective on that in the marketplace? Do you think there's a little bit of truth to that? It's just an outlier situation. It more that you look for loyalty in certain ways when you had teammates on your team, and we can use the trust framework to have this
Hmm.
conversation too.
When you say career
Sure.
to career, you mean going from a sales role to maybe a
Yeah.
marketing role at a
So
different company?
what this person did was they would be a manager here, wanted to be a director. They told her no. And obviously this person was single. It's different when you have
Hmm.
kids and stuff. And I think what she was able to do was since she had the leverage of just jumping to another company and then
Hmm.
jumping to another company, she now this person is almost at a CEO level to pull that off and has not spent more than 3 years with a
Hmm.
company. That
Hmm.
is now that's an outlier.
Yeah, she seems very probably very talented.
But there's the narrative of loyalty. And I
Hmm.
believe in loyalty. And it's just challenging for me, if I'm being real with you, I sometimes find that word challenging when a lot of people feel they've proven themselves, but then they're not awarded the opportunities. And I'm
Hmm.
sharing some wham-whas with you,
Yeah, it's
but
fine.
I
I get it.
think those wham-whas exist. How do we
Hmm.
start to squash those wham-whas? And even though it's not your time, don't
Hmm.
worry.
First of all, you send me back to my corporate days when you said people don't want to move you because we need you here in this role.
Right.
That was a pet peeve that would get me so angry. How dare you stop someone from growing their career for you? Like, that's pretty selfish, if you ask me. Like, I need you here. You can't go there. That's just not right. Clearly, you performed. You did everything they needed you to do or wanted you to do. And now they're not going to reward you for that. It just seems, like I said, it's very selfish. The second thing I would say is um, I used to be all about loyalty, and I always felt like J&J took care of me, and I would give them everything back. I like I said to you, if I had to go to, I was coaching my kid's soccer team, and that meant, and I asked my boss, I told him before I said I would do it, I'm going to have to leave once a week at 3 o'clock to get home to be on the field at 4 because it gets dark by 5:30. And the
Right.
first day I was supposed to do that, I said, he came into my office minutes before I was going to pack up to leave. And I said, Jeff, if you remember, I told you I was going to be coaching and, today's the day. And he looked at me and he said, oh, well, then get out of here. Come see me first thing in the morning and take care of it. He said, what, are you going to leave them on the field alone? He was really supportive. That kind of boss, I'm coming in early. I'm staying late when I need to because he recognized that I have a life outside of there. So that built loyalty for me with him. Just another very quick example because I think it's a great
Sure.
story, a
Please do.
sad story, but great. When I was a district manager, I got a call from one of my reps, and he was absolutely broken up. I mean, I could barely
Mm.
understand what he was saying, and it was real early in the morning. I was okay, calm down, get yourself together. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And when he finally did, he told me that his brother owned a restaurant in Puerto Rico, but the night before he was robbed at gunpoint and he was
Ugh.
shot and murdered.
Oh my
And he said,
goodness.
I've got to get my parents and me to Puerto Rico. I don't have the money. It was before corporate cards and all this other stuff we have now. He said, can J&J float me a loan and they could just take it out of my paycheck, but I got to get my parents and me down there. So I called the home office and it was before hours and I left a message for the HR guy. His name was Stan Davis. And I like to mention his name because he's sadly passed away and I just
Yeah.
want to keep his name going. And
Yeah.
within an
Of
hour,
course.
I got a call back from him saying, tell this guy there are 3 round trip tickets waiting for you at Kennedy Airport. Don't worry about reimbursing us. Just take care of your family, do what you need to do, and we'll be here when you get back. And to
Wow.
me, I mean, that rep, I think he's going on 40 years with the company. And for me too, I mean, who wouldn't want to work for a company that would do that? So there was a loyalty, it was a give and take in both those examples. And then I turned 52, and at the operating company I was at, we got a new general manager. And in our very first meeting, he said to me, I've led 2 sales training and leadership development teams, Ken, and you will never live up to my expectations. And then he made my
Mm,
life miserable for the next few months
mm,
until finally HR called me in and they let me go. And it was really one of the
really?
most devastating times of my life. And I'll get back to that
Yeah.
as
Right.
our conversation goes. But that's when it made me think loyalty only goes so far. And I now coach my
Mm,
clients that if you're working for a company, you do the best you can, you give them their money's worth, you go above and beyond when you can or you need to, but don't be so complacent that you're not also keeping an eye out for yourself and your career. Because if I could get laid off after 25 years and 24 years of meets and exceeds job expectations, anybody could get laid off. You've always got to be prepared for what's next. So I do think loyalty is important, but it only goes so far. I think that that's where trust comes in. When I develop my representatives and people who work for me, I develop them knowing that I was helping them to get better and that they may leave me for another department or for another company. But if I truly want them to be dedicated and to have any sense of loyalty to do the best job they can, I need to show them that I care about them enough to help them get better enough to maybe leave me. And if they
mm.
do, I celebrate that. Good for you. You got what, you worked hard, you deserve it, and get it. Get what you deserve. I just have no patience or no sensitivity to leaders who aren't leading with their people's best interests in mind.
25 years is a long time.
Yeah.
Heck, I mean, I thought you used to think 5 years at a company was a long time. Are you comfortable if I peel that onion a little more based on
Sure.
that experience? Like, I don't
Hmm.
know how open you want to be about it, or
I'm an open book, Paul. Whatever
that's
you
fair.
ask, I'm fine.
So when that happened and everything went down, and then you said it was a couple months after you had, I would define that particular individual in this example as just a toxic manager. That's just how I would define them
Yeah.
for context.
Yeah.
Post that situation, what were some of the key thoughts that you had to overcome? Because
Hmm.
I've been laid off. I've never worked anywhere 25 years, been laid off. I would feel that's
Hmm.
a bigger sting, me personally.
Yeah.
But what were some of those key thoughts that if you could wave a magic wand, talk to Ken now in that moment and say, don't worry, here are the thoughts you have, but
Hmm.
here's why you're going to overcome them. Maybe we could go down that path. And then I have a follow up question.
First of all, regarding that manager or general manager, I'm not sure if he left the company, but they sold that division of Johnson and Johnson, which JJ doesn't do very often. So I like to
Hmm.
think that once I left, they couldn't maintain the business without me around. It's my story, Paul. I'm sticking to that one. But to your question, I will say to you that that was one of the most difficult times of my life. I was 52, as we said, 2 kids in college, 1 in high school. The thoughts going through my head were, oh my God, what am I going to do now? How am I going to support my family? How am I going to pay for college, which I just always expected to do? I remember I stopped at a gas station on the way home, and I remember thinking, how am I going to tell my family this? I mean, this is humiliating. It's embarrassing, besides being threatening to our lifestyle. And the word I used to describe it is devastated. It was really
Hmm.
hard. And it was so hard that I needed help to get out of it. And I did seek out a therapist. I'm not ashamed to admit that. Plenty of people have
Right.
therapists. And I remember I went to my first session with her. And it was about an hour and a half long, and I left and I felt okay. And then next week, at about 45 minutes, she said, okay, Ken, let's start wrapping it up. And I said, whoa, 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 Lynn, wait a second. I paid you the same amount last week when I got an hour and a half as this week, but it's only 45 minutes. And she said, well, Ken, I just you were not in the best shape last week. I didn't feel comfortable letting you get behind the wheel of a car. And
Like,
I went home to my wife. I said, can you believe she said that to me? And my wife said, yeah, I can believe it because you were a mess. I was, but she helped me get my confidence back. And what I would tell myself back then, and I tell my clients today, is that it may seem helpless, but you will land a job. You will land a good job. You will get back on your feet and you'll get back to where you were. I just you have to have that mindset because if you don't,
hmm,
it's really hard to interview confidently. It's really hard to do anything well when you're thinking this isn't going to work. I don't have what it takes. I would also say that in a lot of cases, people look back and say, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I would say similarly, corporate America, I was done with corporate America. And I mentioned to you, Paul, and I think corporate America was done with me. And now I look
hmm,
back and I think if I wasn't pushed out the door, I wouldn't have started my own coaching practice. I wouldn't have started my own keynote speaking and
hmm.
have control of my life the way I do now. So I loved my time at corporate, met great people, did great things, gave me a great lifestyle, and it helped prepare me to do what I do now.
I'm curious, is there a moment of success post layoff where you said to yourself, I'm okay? I don't know. And it could be in therapy, it could be later and down the journey. Was there a moment that kind of is top of mind for you to answer that question?
Well, it's interesting because one of the biggest downsides to losing a job like that, when you get laid off or fired or whatever you want to call it, is the damage it does to your self esteem. I remember talking to a friend about, I always thought I was a success. I thought I was successful. And yeah, well, how do you define success? And that made me think
Hmm,
about it that I was thinking in terms of my job compensation, but then I was thinking, well, I have a great family. I have great friends. I've had a successful career. I am good at what I do. And sometimes I had to convince myself of that afterwards. And getting out into the world and starting to interview for jobs, I realized I'm going to be fine. I'm going to get a job. And my first job was as vice president of coaching at a startup company.
hmm.
But it went well and it showed me that I can do it and I will be back to where I was. And my last job, by the way, was at Bristol Myers Squibb, where I led the oncology sales training and leadership development team. So
Oh, wow.
um, that's also what got me going into career coaching, thinking, hey, I landed 3 new jobs while I was in my 50s, and I went through hell to get there. And Paul, I know you've experienced similar. So I could
Right.
help other people. I could help them with the technical aspect of a job search, but I could also help them get through those psychological moments. I'm not a therapist, but I've been to
No, I'm with you.
therapy, so I can help that way too. So that's how I got to where I am today.
Reflecting a little farther back, now we're here in this moment. If I were to put you on the spot and say, Ken, what's your definition of loyalty? You only have 3 to 5 sentences as best as possible. What is that definition of loyalty? Ken Shear's 25 year success, bounce back, been a vice president, executive coach, wrote a book, developed the framework for trust that's for super successful. What's your definition of loyalty when we look at the whole picture?
That's a very good question. I think I would say that loyalty is about demonstrating that you can be trusted, that you can be trusted with someone's secrets, you can be trusted with information, you can be trusted with someone's career, and you know that that person has your best interests in mind. And I think as a leader, that's what you have to establish, that I'm asking you to do things to help develop you, or I'm giving you this to help you get better. And everything I'm doing, it's not about me, it's about you and how I can help you be more successful. And I think that breeds loyalty. I'll give you another example. When I was at Bristol Myers, and maybe you've experienced this too, Paul, a VP for some reason had an issue with one of the sales trainers, which is 2 levels below me, but obviously I had a relationship with him.
Hmm,
And she wanted me to fire him. That's what she said, just fire him. I don't think he's any good. And I said, well, based on what? I fought to protect this guy as best I could. And it became very clear that she she wasn't going to change her mind. So I went to this guy, and as a leader, you can't say that to someone that you're on your way out. But
right,
I felt a loyalty to this guy because he worked hard. He did the best he could. He wasn't great, but he wasn't bad. He was good enough. He
right.
was getting it done. And I just said to him, Matt, you've got, I can't tell you where it's at because he knew, he felt the pressure. I said, but all I could tell you is you got to take care of yourself. And he said, well, I could lose my job. I mean, I said, I'm just saying, do what you have to do to take care of yourself. Now, essentially, I was telling him, go find a new job, which is going to make it tougher for my team to get done what they needed to get done. But to me, I had a sense of loyalty to him. He worked hard for me. He did everything he could. And then he came back to me a month or so later and said, Ken, I'm turning in my resignation. And he was very
Mm.
appreciative that I did that. And again, it's not about me as a leader. It's got to be about the team. If you're an individual contributor, it's not about you. It's about what you could do for your team or your stakeholders or your customers, whoever you're dealing with. And if you do that, I think you're going to build loyal relationships, trusting relationships that'll help you get to where you want to be.
I think it's very commendable to be able to feel that type of toxic situation because I can only imagine personally the
Mhm.
pressure from above to be in the middle, but also think about the best interests of who you serve. And I will give empathy to middle managers in America. I do feel it is one of the most intense positions because you basically have two major customers. You've got the customers above you and the customers on your team. It's an intense position, like, and for you
Mhm.
to be in that position, I think is really hard to navigate. I'll share something with you. You had mentioned therapy.
Mhm.
I never realized how much it was intense for me when I was going through my toxic situation. Like I remember, I'm also a person of faith. If you're okay, are you comfortable if I share this aspect with
Absolutely.
you? And I remember two parts of the story, and then we can kind of off of this into going a little more back to you if that's fair. I remember I was trying to get life insurance. And that's an adult thing to do, right? You got to get those terms and perms.
Yeah.
And I got denied. And I was like, what am I getting denied for? Everything checked with my health.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we saw that you had a surplus in therapy and we felt you were suicidal when you have that much therapy. And I had to write a letter. So I, no, no, no. I just had a toxic manager who said my kids didn't matter or that my personal life didn't matter. And they were like, oh, well, why didn't you just say so? And then I had to get approved. And but even after I was on the other side and the HR people, I have a lot of in my heart HR. I think there's a lot of good HR people. I think there's
Mhm.
only a few bad actors out there who misrepresent all of HR. It's just a
Mhm.
personal belief of mine.
Mhm.
But I remember I went to church and I was sharing my wham-whams with my pastor. And he said, I'm going to give you 4 words that are going to change your life. And you're going to need to say these 4 words maybe 100 times a day.
Mhm.
And this is my new practice. It's bless them, help me. Just
Mm.
say that as many times as you can.
Mhm.
So bless them, help me. When you wrote that book, Ken,
Mhm.
did you write that, if I may, post all of this? And that's when you were inspired to write it? Was it something you were doing during? When was the point of where you started writing the book toward
Mhm.
completion? And is this and let's talk about that a little more, that journey
Yeah.
through that.
Yeah. No, I definitely started after my corporate career and as I was coaching people. And I started doing blog posts on LinkedIn and I had a pretty good collection of stuff. And I thought, I'm able to help people verbally, but if I could put this all together in a book, people can either use it after they work with me or just use it on their own to help them get through it. One of the reasons why I came up with this trust being the key is going back to my J&J days. And you may be familiar, though you're a young man, so you may not remember the Tylenol scare. Are you familiar with that? Back in
Not the recent
1980s.
one. Is this a different
No, this
one?
is a different one. It's funny. I did a talk the other day. I was like, oh, it's bad timing for this one.
No, please, no, but share with me the other Tylenol
The
scare.
other one, the original
This one,
Tylenol
okay,
scare.
please do.
So anyway, it was in 1982. This little girl in Chicago, 12 years old, wasn't feeling well. Went to her parents. They gave her a couple Tylenol and said, "Go to sleep. You'll wake up in the morning. You'll feel fine." And unfortunately, she never woke up.
Real quick, the only reason this podcast grows is because of you. When you hit that follow button or you leave us a review, it means the world to me. I did a cost analysis. Each episode costs somewhere around $2,500 and upward. We give a lot of this professional development away for free, but what makes the world to me is when you leave a review or you give us 5 stars, I will do everything in my power to make sure that the Manager's Mic podcast is exceptional and serves your professional development. Take care, and back to the show.
Tragically, she actually died. And then next day, there was 6 other people, including 4 from one family, who also died. And so they sent in a health inspector to this house where the family passed, and they found an open Tylenol bottle with tablets missing. They found a receipt within a couple of days, and when the inspector smelled the bottle, she said she smelled like an almond-like scent. So she knew something was wrong. And when they tested the capsules, some lunatic had emptied them of the acetaminophen and put in cyanide instead. So these people
Oh
took
my
cyanide and
goodness.
died. And it was
Uh,
tragic. And so J&J had to figure out what to do. They could launch a public relations campaign saying, oh, everything's fine. It's only a few patients. Millions have been used. It's tragic, but it's unusual. They could have launched an advertising campaign to doctors and nurses saying, keep recommending it's safe, it's effective. Look at this data. Or they could have just let it blow over, right, to the next news cycle. But they didn't. They looked at the credo I told you about earlier, and the first responsibilities to the healthcare workers and the patients they serve. And they did launch a public relations campaign telling people stop taking Tylenol capsules, and if you have any, return them. And we're taking them off the shelf at the cost of hundred millions of dollars. And when we know it's safe again, we'll put it back on the market. And they did put it back on the market a few months later with the first tamper-resistant bottle. And you're trying to get
yeah,
that bottle open,
yeah,
and you're wondering, why do they do this? This is
yeah.
where it happened. And within a couple
Really?
months, it was the number one over-the-counter pain reliever again. The reason why is because J&J, which was built on trust with some other baby company, J&J, Johnson baby shampoo, baby
Right.
powder, Band-Aids, they never lost the trust. The people knew, the consumers knew, well, J&J didn't put profit ahead of my safety, and they trust the
Oh,
company. And I thought that was an amazing thing to do. And to me,
yeah.
it said, it just talked about the value of trust and about being transparent. Hey, that wasn't good news to share with people. We don't know what's going on, but we're taking it off the shelves. The
Oh,
results, the result, it wasn't just how much money are we making. The result is, are we keeping that relationship with people? Because that could impact the other brands as well. Are we
yeah,
communicating in the right way? Understanding the importance of safety and trusting your pharmaceutical companies was there. It was a
yeah,
very simple message. Stop taking it till we can tell you it's safe. The way the teams worked within J&J, how manufacturing approached it. And because this is written up now in business books, because it was
yeah. This is a public story.
case study. Yeah. So I think it really just said to me that it's all about trust. I mean, it doesn't matter what the relationship is. You've got to have trust if it's going to be productive and successful.
That's an intense story. You
Yeah.
said in 1982
Yep.
is when you had went through there and you were working there at the time when it all
I was
went
not
down.
working there at the time.
Oh, you
No, but
weren't working there. Sorry.
no, but
That's a story.
it's part of the indoctrination. This is the company where
Okay.
this is actually the integrity that we want in our people. That's not a good news story, but
Yeah.
it's not always going to be good news. That's how you handle bad news too.
I find it fascinating that we have the tendency to blame these big companies sometimes, but the reality is there is some truth to the saying more money, more problems. There
Yeah.
really is a lot of validity
Mhm.
to that statement. Something I was reading the other day that was like, if you want to make $1 million, you have to go through $1 million worth of pain.
Do you remember the Occupy Wall Street protests that went on? I don't know when it was. I guess
It
maybe.
doesn't ring a bell, but what is the
Yeah.
Occupy Wall Street event that you're referring to?
Well, it was people were literally camping out and protesting against Wall Street. There were just
Okay.
hundreds or thousands of people that were down there every day for whatever amount of time. And I remember thinking, what are they doing? They're protesting a building. They're protesting. What is that? But then when
Right.
I got laid off, or I've seen other things where people have put themselves in front of their workers or employees have done that. And it struck me that they weren't protesting Wall Street. They were protesting the fact that companies will put themselves ahead of their people. We need to make
Mm.
more money. We're going to lay people off. Those people that got us to this point, too bad we're laying them off. To me, that's where the loyalty ended. Maybe it was always like that, but I think it's become tougher over the years. And I think that that is where, like I say, loyalty ended and where it's really every person for themselves. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do the best job you could do and be as loyal as you can be to the company while you're with them, but it doesn't mean you have to stay with them forever. It doesn't mean you can't leave your teammates, even though that might make you sad or feel bad that you're doing it to them. You still care yourself because tomorrow they could say, sorry, you got to go. So I think that's where loyalty was lost.
Since we're on the subject of loyalty, when you look at today's world, the
Mhm.
war on remote, I've had a
Mhm.
couple guests on my podcast talk about this. You look at what a couple companies are just tackling that because there's a lack of trust.
Mhm.
There's a lack of belief that our workers are working. There's so much. I just feel like right now we're
Mhm.
more divided than ever between employee and employer. It
Yeah.
just feels that way in a lot of companies.
Mhm.
And I'm curious about your perspective. What do we need to go back to?
Mhm.
Where are we moving away from? What do we need to get back to start
Mhm.
bridging those trusts between employer and employee based on the
Mhm.
clients you're serving, the people you're helping, and through the time it took for you to become the subject matter expert through your book, Ken?
Mhm. You could only do what you can do. If you're a manager or a
Correct.
director, or even a VP, you could be overridden by the president or the board of the company or whatever. So I think that's
Mhm.
the first thing is you have to control what you can control. And I often say to my clients, look, you took the time, presumably, you did your due diligence, you interviewed this person enough, get a good feel for who they are, you checked their background, you hired them because you think they could do their job. Let them do the job. Don't micromanage them. Give them the tools they need. Be transparent from the trust model. Give them all the information you can, good and
Right.
bad. Maybe some you have to hold back, but working with someone when you think they're not telling you something or they're holding something back, it's really hard to give of yourself when you feel that from them. So I think it's important to do that. I think it's important when you talk about results in the trust model, it's not just the end results. We used to say at
Mm.
J&J, if you achieved your goal for that project, but you left bodies in your wake, not a success. And hitting
Right.
milestones along the way so you can course correct as needed or encourage as appropriate. The understanding again is about when you're doing a job and I know you want to get to the next level, I'm going to steer you towards things that will help you prepare for that. I mean, the world's crazy. There's so much stuff coming at us all the time from different angles. I always will always be amazed by the fact that humans in one study at least showed we have an 8-second attention span, which is really tough. It's because so much is coming at us. So helping your people focus on the priorities and then teams, building your team, your network of professionals, but also your family and friends. And each one of those will help you build that relationship with your employees because
Right.
you're giving them the trust to do the job you hired them for. You're not leaving them alone. The two worst management styles to me are one is the micromanager who won't let you do anything without checking in with them or is always in your
Yep.
business. And then the other one is the one who says, if you don't hear from me, that means everything's going well. Two very damaging leadership styles. It's all about hiring the right people, of course, and then giving them the tools and letting them do their job.
Any projects you have upcoming in the next 18 months, 2 years, so people sign up maybe for your newsletter or whatnot, they can stay up to date. Talk about some of those things.
People can get in touch with me. I'd love to connect with people on LinkedIn. That's probably the platform I'm most active on. And then my book, What's Trust Got to Do with It, is available on Amazon. My website is surecoaching.com. So there are a number of different ways people can get in touch with me. And I will say this, I love talking to people and I love helping people. That's why I do what I do. I actually recently even started, I'm a hospice volunteer now. So I'm
Wow.
helping people that way. It's just in my DNA. So anybody listening, if you want to have a half-hour chat just to bounce ideas off me, just to get my thoughts on something or just to vent, you could reach out. My contact information is in my LinkedIn profile. My calendar link is there. You could schedule time right there or, email me at ken@surecoaching.com and I'll help you in any way I can and no pressure. If you want to talk about working together, great. If not, I love connecting with people.
I do have one more question I think we should end on, and I think it's important. How do we define winning today?
From a professional side, compensation is important. I'm not denying that, but personally, I've never put that as my number one driver.
Mm.
Winning is seeing other people succeed, helping them succeed, and doing what I could do to help a project or people. And I've always found that when I did that, the compensation followed. When I see other people doing well based on my actions, it makes me feel great. I get a buzz. When I get off a call, a coaching call with someone, and we've really made progress, I get a little buzz from that. I just love that feeling of knowing that I influenced somebody and changed their life for the best. So to me, that's what winning is. It's helping people.